Welcome. Hope you had a sounds like wonderful discussions. So we were discussing about creating Bodhicitta mind by using this particular meditation technique known as equalizing and exchanging set with others. In relation to that meditation technique, we discuss or talk about the first two steps of meditations. First is equalizing self with others. And as Shantideva explained, it is the sufferings, because suffering is something unwanted, whether it is yourself, others suffering, we should try to avoid and try to reduce it whenever is possible, regardless whether it's experienced by oneself or whether it's experienced by someone else, because it is something suffering, and suffering is unwanted by anyone. And if it is happiness, then we try to achieve or try to actualize it, whether it is yours or others, because it is happiness and it is something everyone wants, because it is something that is need to be achieved, accomplished. So whenever we have any opportunity or able to do that for oneself, for others, then one should try to do that. So, and so we talk about this this morning, that we recognizing and being aware and recognize that we all are same and equal, wanting to be happy, not wishing suffering. On the basis of that, on the basis of that awareness, recognition, then we try to avoid and try to eliminate this suffering, regardless of whoever is experiencing it. If there is any way that we can reduce, if there's any way we can get rid of, regardless who is suffering, we try to reduce, we try to eliminate that. And on the basis of that understanding that we all are equal, wanting to be happy, then again, regardless of who is experiencing, whether oneself or others, whenever there is some happiness to be achieved, we will try to be helpful, beneficial in actualizing that happiness. So that is the first point. And then second point, we talk about second step of the meditation, meditating on the fault or shortcoming of the selfish attitude, by seeing selfish attitude is the main enemy, not the outside enemy. As Shantideva also explained, if there is no internal enemy, there is no external enemy. But when there is internal enemy, then we will always have external enemy. Even if we try to go in a very remote place, there is no one to bother you. Still, your mind will be upset as long as your mind is not, as long as you have not dealt with the internal enemy, Even though there is no one to disturb you, but the weather will disturb you. The wind will disturb you, you know, the bird will disturb you, you know, the sound of the water will disturb you. So, so therefore, as all the teaching says, the main enemy that really harms and hurt us and others is that this internal enemy. And this selfish attitude is one of the main culprits of that, recognizing that and therefore trying to reduce that selfish attitude as much as possible by recognizing that. Because selfish attitude is the main internal enemy to develop bodhicitta mind. If you don't have strong selfish attitude, then we don't have the space to develop true bodhicitta mind. Until we clear that space, of the selfish attitude, when we clear that space of selfish attitude, then there is enough space and it allows us to develop the bodhicitta mind. Then there is a space to develop bodhicitta mind. So we have to reduce and offer that selfish attitude in order to to reduce and eliminate the selfish attitude. And in order to reduce and eliminate the selfish attitude, we have to understand why we need to reduce, why we need to get rid of it. By understanding it is that selfish attitude that hurts and harms us long-term, short-terms. It harms us in this time, and because selfish attitude will create negative karma, it harms in the futures. And because selfish attitude that stop us from progressing our spiritual path to develop true love, compassion, bodhicitta mind, and to progress on the bodhicitta path. And therefore that is the main selfish attitude. The others, external enemy cannot stop us from cultivating to progress in our spiritual path. The other enemy cannot stop us from progressing our spiritual path. But who stops from progressing our spiritual path is that selfish attitude. That selfish attitude, not the external enemy. So therefore, as Lama Tsongkhapa explained, until we recognize this is the main enemy, otherwise we don't recognize this is the main enemy, we cherish the selfish attitude. So far, at the moment, we cherish the selfish attitude. We feed our selfish attitude. We hold on that selfish attitude. Why? Because we don't really understand that selfish attitude is the real enemy that hurts and harms us. And the more we reflect, the more we contemplate, the more you understand that, the more we will try to, instead of cherishing it, instead of holding it dear, we will try to get rid of it. And when you want to get rid of it, then you will try practice more to get rid of it. And when you try and practice more to get rid of it, you will be able to get rid of it. And if you are able to get rid of it, then you have less problem, less conflict, less sufferings, and also it gives to develop, spiritual realizations such as true love, compassion, bodhicitta mind, and all other bodhisattvas realizations that comes. So, in short, as Shandeva explains, selfish attitude is the root of all the problem, all the suffering in the world. Then third step, the meditations, is meditating on the benefit of cherishing thought for others. You know, the helpfulness, the benefit of cherishing for others. Again, as Shandeva explains, and in all other teachings, you know, the cherishing thought for others is the root of all the happiness. You know, is the gateway to all the happiness. Again, we try to see immediately what are the effect of that. You know, when you cherish someone, you know, very dearly, very highly, you know, you don't have space to feel negative about that cherishing thought, because you cherish that person so much, because you cherish someone very highly, very dearly, there's less space to feel negative about that. There's less space to feel bitter about that person, negative. If you don't have those bitter feeling, negative feeling, immediately you experience more peace. Immediately you experience more peace in your heart. You know. Also, when you cherish someone very much, even when they make mistake, you can forgive them easily. You can let it go easily. Forgive them easily. Why we are able to let it go, forgive easily some when they make mistake, and why we find very difficult to let it go and forgive when someone make mistake. One of the thing is, the more you cherish someone, the more it will be easier. You know, the more we have anger, bitter feelings, the more, even small mistake they make, it will be much more harder to forgive and let it go. So, you know, immediately you feel peace, because the cherishing thought for others, you know, take away the space for those bitter feelings to grow, arise, as well as it makes easy to feel positive feelings such as letting go, forgiveness, you know, as well as it helps us to practice such as generosity easily. When you cherish someone, practicing generosity is not so difficult. When you don't cherish someone, practicing generosity might be more challenging, you know. So again, you know, it helps us to, you know, develop many other practice, make it more suitable and easier, you know, to that to develop many other practice. Mm. Then in, you know, when you cherish someone, you know, it make it much more easier to develop loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind. When you cherish someone, on the basis of that, you know, cultivating sense of empathy, care, love, compassion become much more easier. On the basis of that, then cultivating bodhicitta become more and more easier. It 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 gives the space to feel all of that and to develop all those inner qualities or spiritual qualities, realizations. And when you live with that kind of life, with a that cherish others, also you have self-confidence. Self-confidence. You have better image of yourself, better feeling for yourself. And when you have better image and feeling for yourself, it also helps to feel also better image of others as, feel we are so selfish. Then we think not only you are so selfish, sometimes maybe everyone is like me, selfish. You also started to feel, you relate how yourself, then everyone must be such selfish person, just like myself. Or when you have such a compassion persons, then you start to, oh, everyone must be more like compassion like me. So you have better image of that. It affects how you see others, depending on how you yourself. A lot of time is a actions to others, how you feel about yourself. People who have a self-hatred or self-esteem, negative image of themselves, sometimes they also have difficulty with trusting in others. Because they have difficulty trusting in themselves, because they have negative image of themselves. Therefore, they have difficulty in trusting themselves. On the basis of that, then they also find much more difficult to trust others. Because then they started to relate that. Whereas someone who have more confidence and trust in themselves, is more easier them to trust and have confidence in others as well. Mm. So, it helped to have more self confidence, and better feelings, the image of oneself, and that reflect also that you have more and more self-respect as well as respect for others, more trusting to others, and all of that too. And also, the happiness of future life, higher future life, and better experience in the future also is a result of cherishing thought for others. Because to have a better, higher future life and better happiness in the future life, you need a strong practice of moral discipline. Moral, moral discipline is one of the main primary cause to have a higher rebirth. And moral discipline that is supported by the practice of generosity and proper pure deed and prayers. Those are main cause, and among them, the moral discipline is one of the main cause for higher rebirth and better happiness. And that moral discipline is very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. The moral discipline is a practice such as avoiding 10 non-virtuous actions, avoiding 10 non-virtuous actions and engage in 10 virtuous actions, okay? Such as avoiding taking the life of others, instead protecting others' life, liberating others' life. Avoiding stealing others, instead practicing generosity, helping them, avoiding sexual misconduct that create pain, suffering in the family, destroy the families, conflict in the family. Instead, we try to, practice that is more faithful. You know, we try to avoid, kind such as lying. Instead, we try to practice truthful. And we try to avoid such as divisive speech. Instead, we try to engage in a more non-divisive. Instead, speech that bring together, you know, harmonious to help to bring harmony, you know, and instead of practicing, harsh speech, we try to practice kind, gentle speech. All of that, why we avoid? Because you cherish others and other beings' feelings. Why we avoid taking someone's life? Because you cherish others' life just as you cherish your life. Just as you cherish your life, same way you cherish others' life are also very important. And because you cherish someone's life, just as you cherish your life, therefore you try to avoid it. Because you see, every life is precious. Not only your life, others' life are precious. You cherish. Therefore, you try to avoid that. So that practice is very much rooted in cherishing others, based on cherishing others. We try to avoid stealings because it hurts someone's feelings when you steal someone's things. Just as when someone steals yours, it hurts you, it upsets you. Same way, we know if we steal someone's things, it will upset someone. It will hurt someone. So you cherish others' feelings and you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want to hurt their feeling. And therefore you avoid stealings. So that practice is very much, again, based and rooted in cherishing someone's feelings, not wanting to hurt someone. And so if you go, all of those practices are very much rooted. And from that perspective, therefore, the practice of moral discipline, practice of generosity, all of them are very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. And because of those practices, then you could have a higher rebirth, happiness of higher rebirth, and happiness in that higher rebirth. And therefore, that happiness is also very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. Even the happiness of liberation, nirvana, is also very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. In order to achieve the happiness of nirvana, you need to have a strong practice of three higher training of wisdom, shamatha, and moral discipline. Without the shamatha, there is no special insight. The wisdom of special insight. Without the moral foundation of moral discipline, there is no shamatha. And so again, that moral discipline is very foundation for the shamatha. Shamatha is the very root of that special insight, the wisdom. Those three are the one that lead to the liberations, nirvana. Again, those practices very much rooted in moral discipline, and that moral discipline, as we explained before, get very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. And therefore, the happiness of liberation is also very much rooted in cherishing thought for others, is caused by cherishing thought for others. And of course, the ultimate happiness of fully awakened state is absolutely rooted in cherishing thought for others, is rooted in the Bodhicitta mind, and Bodhicitta mind is, very much rooted in cherishing thought for others. Without the thought for others, there wouldn't be Bodhicitta. Without the Bodhicitta, there wouldn't be a Bodhisattva's path. Without Bodhisattva's path, there's no fully enlightenment, no ultimate. So from that perspective, we can understand how all the happiness, when we see in the scriptures, whether it's the Shantidevas or the Lamrim teachings, all the Lojong teachings, when they talk about how all the happiness come through cherishing thought for others, how all the happiness is rooted in cherishing thought for others. That is how it is. We can look many different levels of happiness: ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment, happiness of liberation, happiness of future high rebirth, and happiness of this life. And if we see that, how, and in another way is, our happiness is result of our virtuous karma, and the virtuous karma, it very much created, rooted in that cherishing thought for others. Buddhist teachings and the practice is based on these compassions, rooted in compassions, based on compassion, rooted in compassions. All the practice are somehow rooted and based in compassions. And that is the cherishing thought for others. And so therefore, otherwise sometimes we see those statements, how all the happiness is coming from cherishing thought for others, but sometimes we wonder, how does this happiness come? How does that happiness rooted in cherishing thought? Because sometimes we cannot see the direct connections. Sometimes we cannot see direct connections, but indirectly they all are rooted in that. Some of them directly, some of them indirectly. And so it is again important to understand and be aware, and with our own observations, reflection, contemplations, not because it was said in Shantideva, because it was said in Lama Tsongkhapa said, or my guru said, or my teacher said. This is what my guru said, this is what my teacher said, this is what Lama Tsongkhapa said, Shantideva said. But not only they said, that you also did analyze yourself, examine yourself, and then you found with your own experience what they said and what you found was just insane. And then that gave you more confidence. Confidence in the teachings, confidence in your teachers, gurus, more faith in all this. And then it helped you. That is what, when we are able to analyze, examine ourselves more deeply with our own experience, and then come to conclusions, that is the case. And once you find that is the case, and then you started to have more confidence and faith in the teaching itself, the practice itself, and to the guru, the teacher who teaches those, as well as to all the masters and Buddhas, for having taught those teachings. Otherwise, our faith would be not stable faith. You know, even if we have faith at certain time, then we started to lose them because it's not grounded on the sound basis. But once it is grounded on a sound basis through such your own experience, then that is when you develop unshakable. Just as Nagarjuna said, his faith to the Buddha increase and become unshakable once he realized, you know, emptiness, dependent arisings. And he was so amazed by the Buddha's teaching on that. Such is the case with also Lama Tsongkhapa. He wrote this praise to dependent arising, praising to the Buddha, and that he started that after he had the realizations of that. And once he had realization of that, he felt how wonderful, as he said, even though from the very beginning he had little faith, but it was not the unshakable faith, you know. But once he had that realizations of what Buddha taught, and then that faith become unshakable, real strong, grounded, you know. And so that can be also case for us when we contemplate, reflect, and then find that. So that is the third point, meditating on cherishing for the benefit of cherishing for others. The fourth point or the step of meditation is exchanging self with others, known as exchanging self. So that is why this title is known equalizing, exchanging self with others. The equalizing part at the very beginning, and then here comes exchanging self with others. And then the whole technique itself is known as equalizing, exchanging self with others. So in this exchanging self with others is, exchanging the attitude. After having meditated on the second and third, Yeah, a little bit. I think this is okay. Can you, okay? Yeah. It feels like the birds, what you call. You have one bird with a long hornbill. I feel like it's the hornbill's bill. So having contemplated on the shortcoming or disadvantage or the fault of the cherishing thought for others, and having meditated on the benefit of cherishing thought for others, that is the first and second point and of the meditation or the step of the meditation. Then, you develop a strong wish to change the attitude because before we cherish ourselves overly, we have selfish, we cherish oneself over the others. And that has been the problem for ourselves, problem for others. Because of that, overly cherishing us, this attitude, we suffer and we also bring suffering to others. On others, if you cherish others, it brings happiness to yourself and it helps you to bring happiness to others. By that understanding, now you have that understanding, therefore, the need to exchange the attitude. Instead of overly cherishing oneself, now we cherish others more than oneself. Before, we cherish ourselves over the others. It's not only cherishing yourself, but you are cherishing overly, cherishing yourself over the others, you know. And therefore, you exchange the attitude. Instead, now you train to cherish others more than yourself. Here, I think I feel like sometimes we need to make some points clarity. I feel sometimes people misunderstand when we talk about the, the selfish attitude, self-centeredness, sometimes also translated as self-cherishing thought, as being the root of all the happiness and the root of all the sufferings and problem. Then sometimes we feel like that means we shouldn't cherish ourselves, you know, and that means not taking care of oneself. That is misunderstanding. If you neglect yourself, if you don't cherish yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, if you neglect yourself, you are neglecting one sentient beings. Unless you are sentient beings. If you are not sentient beings, then it's okay. But if you are sentient beings, just as you need to cherish others, just as you need to take care of others, just as you need to equally, you have to also take care of yourself, cherish yourself, and not neglect. The problem is not because you cherish yourself. The problem is not because you take care of yourself. That is not a problem. The problem is we overly cherish ourselves and we neglect the others. We overly cherish ourselves and we neglect the others. That become the problems. So here, you cherish yourself, but you cherish others even more than yourself. There is a difference between cherishing others and totally not cherishing, neglecting yourself, from cherishing yourself, but at the same time cherishing others even more than yourself. That is what here. you know. Mm. And if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't cherish and take care of yourself, if you neglect yourself, how are you going to take care of others? You will need others to take care of you. Instead of you being able to take care of others, instead of you being able to help others, you will need others' help to take care of yourself. So therefore, taking care of yourself, cherishing yourself is not the problem. The problem is overly cherishing and totally neglecting others' well-beings in the process of that, overly cherishing. By being too much overly selfish, you don't care about others' well-beings. That is the problem. And so, and also, when we talk about cultivating bodhicittas, cultivating great loving kindness, compassion, great compassion is embracing each and every sentient beings. Great love is embracing each and every sentient beings. Bodhicitta is embracing each and every sentient beings. If you don't embrace yourself, if you neglect yourself, then there is no way that you can develop love, compassion that include all sentient beings. That embrace sentient beings because you have excluded one sentient being, which is yourself. Mm. And also, as Lama Ishi mentions, it says, if you don't love yourself, you don't know how to love others. When you love yourself through that experience, then you, as much the way you love yourself, then we extend that to others. And so therefore, you know, loving oneself, taking care of oneself, having compassion for oneself, cherishing oneself is not the problem. The problem is when we overly cherish and totally ignore others' well-being, totally neglect others' well-being, when we hold ourselves more important than others. That is the real problems. So here we that attitude, we hold ourselves important, but others even more important. We cherish ourselves, but we cherish others even more. And those, through that, then we try to change, exchange the attitude from cherishing oneself more than others to cherishing others more than oneself. And as a part of exercise, meditation exercise in relation to that, then, normally this meditation is helpful as His Holiness often mentions about this particular, you visualize, and it is explained in Shantideva. Sometimes it is hard to, sometimes we can get lost because in Shantidevas he goes so details. Sometimes, you don't know how to kind of condense, summarize. A lot of time when you are studying, sometimes we get lost into all the details and then we don't know how to come into the content After all this, what is the essence of that? What is the main essence of that? Where, how to, and sometimes we can also be that, but in there, there is some exercise that he used there. And so if we kind of make that exercise meditation more simplified, is, you visualize your selfish attitude, selfish person at one side, and you visualize countless sentient beings on another side. And then yourself, this person, yourself, as a, unbiased, observing it. Okay? On one side, there's this one, yourself, the all selfish persons. Another side, there's countless sentient beings. And then there is yourself now who is observing that. So who is more important? That one individual who is selfish, or countless sentient beings who is on the other side, If you are unbiased, from unbiased, if you look at that, which is more important, This one selfish, if something bad happens, is one individual. Something good happens, is one person's. On other side, is countless sentient beings. If something bad happens, it is affected countless sentient beings. If something good happens, it affects countless sentient beings. That being the case, as an unbiased observer, okay, as an unbiased observer, then you begin to see which is more important. And when you look that perspective, then you begin to understand these countless sentient beings on the other side is more important. So that helps us to understand why the others are more important than oneself. And why we need to respect others more than oneself. So it helps with that, to make a point of that practice when you do that kind of visualization and trying to, through such visualization, trying to observe in an unbiased way to have a better understanding of that. That kind of meditation, of visualizations. So that is the fourth point, exchanging self with others. The 4 steps of the meditation. And the fifth point, or the step of the meditation, is the practice of Tonglen, taking and giving. And Tonglen practice, the main Tonglen practice, is to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, to increase and to improve loving kindness, compassion. That is the main purpose of the practice of Tonglen, as well as to train our mind to be more courageous and more confidence, more self-confidence, more courage. Because when we engage in both sorts of path, we need a lot of courage. If you don't have strong courage, you might give up, even just forget about countless sentient beings for eons and eons. We are ready to give up after trying to help someone, one person, for a few years. We feel I'm done. I cannot help anymore. I don't have any more energy. This is not for me. Forget countless sentient, one sentient beings, okay? One person. Forget eons and eons, even just for a few years, sometimes a few months. Why easily give up? Because we don't have the enough strong courage. Bodhisattvas on the someone who is on the bodhisattva path, they need a lot of courage, strong courage, confidence, self-confidence. And Tonglen practice is also a practice that help us to develop those courages, you know, and self-confidence, courage as well. Mm. Also, Tonglen practice can be very helpful and beneficial. Of course, try to do the Tonglen practice every day as a part of practice to develop loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind. But also, you know, especially when we are dealing with our own challenges, difficulties, to do Tonglen practice can be very powerful, helpful. Whatever challenges that we might be dealing with, you know, whether it is our physical health issues, whether it is mental health issues, emotional health issues, whether we are dealing with some loss of someone very close and dear to us, whether we're dealing with, you know, having some challenges in our relationships, whether it's within your partners, parents, children's, friends, you know, we're having a job situations, financial situation, challenges, whatever, you know, so where we are dealing with different obstacles, different challenges, different problems that could manifest, that that we could be encountering, you know, to do Tonglen practice in that can be very powerful in dealing with that. Mm. Lot of time, those challenges, those problems become very painful and sufferings, you know, because we feel it shouldn't happen, but it's happening, you know, something unwanted, something, you know, and then we started when we have that attitude, it is something unwanted, something meaningless, something painful, you know, why is it happening to me? You know, it feel like that. And so then, you know, sometimes we're so obsessed with that, our mind become, you know, more and more, getting more and more darker state. And the more we feel the pain, more and more stronger. You know, sometimes we feel this is the biggest problem. This is the biggest pain. This is the biggest challenge in the world. That is how we feel. Is that bigger challenge or not? Maybe not. Is but in terms of feeling, we feel that way, you know, because we are so self-obsessed with that. With the Tonglen practice, it helps us to we recognize our pain, suffering, problem, challenges. But while we recognize and be aware of that, but then you know we allow it to open to feel and see others' problem and pain and sufferings. You know, think I am the not only one who is going through this pain and sufferings. There are so many others there who are experiencing similar pain and sufferings, maybe even worse pain and suffering than myself. my problem. So when you are able to see and when you are able to understand the other's pain and suffering and problems, similar or even worse, then you begin to see your problems or feel your pain and suffering small, lighter. Compared to all others' problems, my problem is small problems. One small dot in the billions of dots. Among billions of dots is just one small dot. Before it feel like this is the only dot and the biggest dot in this world, that's how you feel. Before, when you only become self-obsessed, why it is happening to me? Why me? That kind of attitude. Started to feel that dot as though that is the only dot in the world and that is the biggest dot. But once we are able to acknowledge, recognize that, acknowledge our pain, suffering, but then we also open our mind to see the pain and suffering around us in the world. And when you are able to see that, then you see your own problem. As I said, one small among billions of dots, and it's not the biggest dot. And you feel much, when you are able to recognize that, see that, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel unmanageable. The problem hasn't gone away, but you feel much lighter in relation to the problem. See is much more lighter, not overwhelming. You see it is manageable, is so, and then on top of that, understanding that I am not only one, but there are so many others who are going through that similar to me, worse, then you try to do the Tonglen practice. Tonglen practice, by understanding others' sufferings, how others are suffering, just like yourself, even more, and then you develop a strong by reflecting on their pain and suffering, trying to feel their pain and suffering, just as you are able to feel your pain and suffering. And then with a strong wish to free them from all the suffering and pain because it's unbearable, it's something painful, something unwanted, and therefore, you visualize and imagine, taking all their sufferings, whatever suffering, in the form of black energies, heavy, dark, heavy energies, as you begin, and go through the nostril, and you can imagine, visualize at your heart, small dot, which is the selfish attitude, and then destroying that. Of course, there are many different kinds, quite a few different visualizations of that. And again, you try to do what you find more easy to relate with. One of the visualization that you often see and hear is, there is a selfish kind of like rock, and then with that it explode, like dynamic, and then destroying that, destroying that selfish attitude. Like when you are destroying with the dynamic, you blow up the rocks. Similarly, that is one that you often see and hear. But I think I heard some people have a little bit difficult of visualizing, imagining, even though it's nothing physically happening, but still sometimes people feel comfortable, the rock being exploded in your inside, Even it's not really happening, but again, it's just how our mind relate in certain way. Sometimes I use that selfish attitude, the black spot, uh, in the form of, black ice. And as you breathe in that warm, dark energy, and that kind of melt, that selfish attitude, destroy by melting that selfish attitude of the ice. And then just as you melt the water, and then you melt in the water, and then water make plant suitable, the earth suitable in same way, then you transform into the loving kindness, compassions. That selfish attitude being transformed into loving kindness, compassions, So that kind of visualizations, again, can be also in some other, I've seen in some others commentaries where using your heart like a wish fulfilling jewel, you know, and you taking all the suffering and cause of suffering, dissolve into that wish fulfilling jewels, and then transform into whatever the sentient beings needs, and then from there sending whatever they needs, sending from that. So again, I think there are slightly different visualizations, very small, small differences, but the main practice, there's no difference, It's taking on other sufferings and giving the happiness. So again, one can see what one feel more comfortable, easy, relatable. That is what I personally feel, there are so many different meditation techniques. Sometimes we feel a little bit overwhelmed, so much to study, so much to learn, so much. Sometimes we feel, why isn't it make it simple, Just one booklet, like a Bible, Sometimes you might feel that way, you know. Why so many different meditation techniques? Even with dealing one emotions, there are so many different meditations, you know. Dealing with anger, so many different meditation. Dealing with attachment, so many different meditations, you know. Trying to cultivate loving kindness, bodhicitta, compassion, so many different meditations. Why? And my understanding is there is so many of that, is so rich and is so, because we all have different mind. Same at the same time, we have different predispositions, different imprint, slightly different way of thinking. And so certain meditation techniques is more effective to someone. And same meditation might not be as effective to someone. And someone else using that, the other meditation might be more effective. So basically, we try and see what is most effective to us, and then we rely on that. And you don't have to be overwhelmed by there's so many of that. Instead, you appreciate that there is so much for everyone. I was, when I first went to United States, you know, I went to a grocery shop, to do grocery shopping. I was too overwhelmed. Because when I went, I live in India, Nepal. You go to the shop, I want a salt, they just give you salt. I want a rice, they just, so whatever you want, you just, there I went and there's so many salt, you know, Himalayan uh, pink salt, that salt. So you didn't know what to pick up, and which one is better or what to pick up, I was I was overwhelmed by not being able to make what to do, or which to pick up, or not being able to. That was how I felt at the very beginning. But after once I understood what you need, then you don't have to be overwhelmed by that. You just go and pick up what you need, and there is all that for different peoples, you know. And same that sometimes we might feel that way in practice, study, meditation, but then again, that is because at the moment we don't know what is more effective to us. Once you find out, trying few, and then you find out this particular meditation technique is more powerful, more effective, then you just try to rely on that and use that, and you don't have to be overwhelmed by all others techniques. And that is same with the deities, hundreds, thousands of deities. And sometimes you might be overwhelmed, you know. You don't have to pick up all of them, you know. Either by yourself or from your teachers, guru, you see what particular karmic connections or what you relate, what you relate with, and then you try to practice that. You don't have to feel that you need to gather everything. If you need to gather all there's thousands, hundred thousands, you know. Even just one deity, there are so many taras. White tara, there are so many different traditions. Green tara, there are so many different traditions, you know, and then all of that. But once, then you don't have to be overwhelmed by that. That is. So I was telling that because we were talking about few different of Tonglen taking on that. We talk about quite few different, um, not a big difference, but small differences. And the reason is that you just try to see what is more relatable, effective, you know, to yourself, and you use that, you know, that particular. And when you do the practice of Tonglen and any other meditations, whether we are doing loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, or even equanimity, to have a better result, we have to be more specific starting point and then slowly expanding it. In term of, it takes a little bit more time, but once you are able to develop on the basis of that, it becomes more stable and real. So if you are trying to do meditation equanimity, first starting with neutral persons, which is more easier to develop equanimity towards neutral, and slowly expanding to your loved ones, where we were attached to, and then slowly expand to the enemy, where we have bitter feeling, anger feelings, and then slowly you expand to all sentient beings. But first you start with those three individuals, importance, instead of starting from the very beginning, all sentient beings. Because when we start with all sentient from very beginning, it might feel easier. and take less time because you have included all sense. But sometimes, even though we feel, you know, we have included all sentient beings when we say, may all sentient beings happiness, cause of happiness, may all sentient beings be free from suffering and cause of suffering. We might be able to feel that you are feeling for all sentient beings. Well, but then when you go more specific, not this one, you know. Before you feel, it seems like when you say, may all sentient beings happiness and cause of, it feels like you are able to feel, you know, that loving kindness, all sentient beings. And same way when you try to feel, may all sentient beings free from suffering and cause of suffering. But then when you go to more specific, this person, then you say, not this one. That one, also not that one. And then you have many lists. Then the all sentient beings become just a word. It doesn't include all sentient beings. It becomes exclusive, not inclusive. And in that way, you cannot really develop true loving kindness, both compassion, bodhicitta, equanimity. But if you go more specific, one by one, and then all sentient beings, because all sentient beings fall into one of those three categories. Either they are close to us, or whether they are someone we have conflict, or they are just a neutral person, not neutral. And then when you expand that all sentient beings, then it becomes real effective. So so that also apply with the Tonglen. And with all this practice, we always study the easier one, and then slowly extend difficult and most difficult one. In terms of equanimity, we start with stranger because it's easy to develop equanimity to that. In terms of loving kindness, compassion, we start with our loved ones because it's more easy to feel compassion, love for them. And then a little bit more difficult, neutral. And then the enemy, which is most difficult. Then we try to also feel loving kindness, compassion, and then to all sentient beings. And that applies to every meditation practice, even Guru devotion. Sometimes we get stuck with one thing. We start with the root Guru because it's easier. But the idea is then slowly we expand that, feeling devotion to all Guru, starting with the easy one, and then the next Guru, which we might not feel the same level of devotion at the very beginning, but the idea is then expand to that, and then to all Gurus. But sometimes we get stuck with the first point, never progress beyond that. And that is same, in all other practices. So here we talk about starting point. And there are many different starting points one can start. Again, it depends on individual, where it's more easier them to do this practice to start with. One can start in terms of 6 Rams, because where the most intense suffering is, because where the most intense suffering is, maybe we might be able to feel the suffering more easily and feel more compassion more easily. And so, in terms of that, in terms of 6 Rams, starting with, one starting point is where there's the most intense suffering, such as suffering of hell, the being of suffering in the hell realms, then expanding to the suffering of hungry ghost realm, then expanding to the suffering of the animal realms and animal beings and human beings, demigod and God, and then that is how we expand and include all sentient beings. That is one starting point, you know. Another starting point is just like loving kindness, compassion. You start doing the Tonglen with your loved ones. It's easier, you know. It is easier for us to take their sufferings. We are more open to take their sufferings and their pain, you know, and we are more open or easier to give our happiness and our virtues and our, to share, to give to them. So we start with that one, with the easy one. We can starting point with the loved one, and then extend to the neutral person, and then to the enemy, and then to all sentient beings. And sometimes also in some teaching they describe also they talk about imagining, you know, for example, in some teaching they explain about, you know, like in the old times, you know, when the animal are killed, you know, that, like for example, big animal like yak, you know, they have to tie their legs and everything, and then, you know, so there's a lot of struggles, you know, tying the legs and then trying to put them on the ground, and then, you know, and then eventually, you know, someone will prick a knife into the vital point, you know. So it's a bit gross and it's painful. So for maybe sometimes it might be easy to, when we imagine of that, the suffering is so intense. And so again, it might feel easy to feel compassion and starting in Tonglen with that, you know. But again, you know, sometimes we can also start, sometimes we see in the news, you know, about young child, you know, in a war zone, you know, all this, again, where just by seeing that, where you feel, you know, easy to feel compassion for them, and you really want to help that child, uh, in such environment, you know, lost parent, in such. So when you sing like that, then, you know, your heart is more open, easy to open, and the willingness to help that person, the child, to take their pain and suffering and problem, and to give them the help. So that can be the starting point, and then again, then you expand to others. So there are many different starting points. So again, you can just try and see what you find more beneficial, helpful, effective, you know, and then you try to start with that. And when we do the extensive practice of Tonglen, you know, first you started to take the suffering, the immediate sufferings, immediate problem, immediate suffering that they might be going through, you know, and then, you know, all the karmic potentials, even though they are not experiencing the suffering immediately, but there is so much karmic potential that could manifest in the futures. So taking all these futures, the potential of any future problems, suffering, pain, all the negative karma, and then taking all the delusions, because again, you know, even they are free from, even you have taken the suffering, if they are not free from the karma, negative karma, still they could, again, they will experience in the future, the potential there. So you take the negative karma. Even you take the negative karma on yourself, if they are not free from the delusion, they could create more negative karma in the future. And so then also take the delusions. And then the subtle obscurations, the obscuration of knowledge, or obscuration to the enlightenment, the subtle obscurations, you know. In terms of taking, then we try to take that, you know. And then in terms of giving, Again, we send as we breathe out using our breath. As you breathe out, you visualize all your happiness, all your positive karma, all your positive realization, all the positive qualities that you have for, in the form of white light and energy. As you breathe out, at the moment that light and energy goes, touch that person, they give immediate relief from the problem, immediate relief and happiness. And then next, then not only they have immediate relief and happiness now you send the future happiness, all the positive karma, giving them all the positive karma, sending them all the positive karma, the cause of future happiness. And not only that, then sending them all the spiritual realizations, all the spiritual realizations, the cause of ultimate happiness. And then finally, giving them the ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. So again, if we do in that way, again, it can be in that slowly, in more detail, can be more helpful, beneficial when we have time, and when we have time and when we are able to do that, to do more detail in that way. And especially, when we do all sentient beings, of course, 6 realms, they have their individual suffering. We talk on their suffering, cause of suffering, negative karma, delusion, obscurations, And those who are free from the suffering, such as arhat, there is no suffering to take on the arhat sufferings. They have the subtle obscurations, then we take them, the subtle obscurations of them. So then we include all sentient beings, subtle obscuration of the arhat, as well as the bodhisattvas who are above the 8 bhumis. Yeah, pure ground, 8 bhumis. When you reach the 8 bhumi, then all bodhisattvas, they are free from all the delusions, but they still have the subtle obscurations, And then again, even though there is no more suffering to take, such as the arhats, no more cause of the suffering, the delusion to take negative karma and delusion take on, but there are still subtle obscurations that obstruct them from becoming fully enlightened. So we take those obscurations and then we send them the highest level of the Vajra-like concentrations at the 10 bhumi that destroy the most subtle of the obscurations, and then then leading them to fully enlightenment. So that one can do that. And one of the things important in such practice, such as Tonglen practice, is, when you do the practice, we do with total conviction that I'm taking their sufferings. I'm really giving, not as that I'm just imagining. Do you get it? Or I'm just imagining taking their suffering. I'm just imagining sending and giving my happiness. Instead, I'm really taking on them, and as though they are really coming on yourself. As though you are really giving your happiness with total convictions. The more stronger you have convictions of that, the more powerful it becomes. More effective that practice, the more powerful it becomes. So when you do practice, regardless whether we are able to take someone's suffering or not, regardless whether we are able to give our happiness or not, send our happiness or not. When you do the practice, you do with total conviction that I'm taking on myself, that I'm sending and giving my happiness. That is important for that practice to become more effective, more powerful. And when we do that, when you train that, that you are really taking on the sufferings, and as though that you are really feeling the pain, suffering sometimes, even that it has really come on you, then you are also training, as we mentioned before, to develop courages. At the moment, I don't want any sufferings. We are ready to run away from our own sufferings, forget about other sufferings. But in this training, not only you are experiencing whatever you're suffering, on top of that, your willingness take the suffering of all others on yourself. You are not only you are no fear of giving all your happiness, all your virtues, all your positive karma, everything, without any fear, without any worry. And when you train that, then your mind become more and more courageous, more and more strong, more courageous, more strong, more self-confidence. That is why the Bodhisattvas are such a strong. That is why they become such a strong, because they have trained, their mind to be a such courageous through such trainings, Yeah, so those are some points. So I guess it is practice time. Okay. Again, try to make yourself as comfortable as possible. And then let your breath to flow naturally. And as inhale and exhale naturally, try to observe and be aware of the breath, keeping your mind one with the breath. Once your mind has been settled down, then we can think, may this practice become cause and conditions to actualize the Bodhicitta mind within mind stream of myself and all sentient beings. And may it be cause and condition to achieve fully awakened state, so I can be greatest help, benefit to each and every sentient beings without any limitations, in more skillful way. Then you can think of someone who is dear to you in your life, or who is very dear to you, who might be going through some challenges, problem, pain, suffering in their life. And think of their pain and suffering. Try to feel their pain and sufferings. And generate a strong wish to free them from their suffering and the cause of suffering. As you breathe in, imagine and visualize all their sufferings, the pain, are pulled, pulled away like the vacuum in the form of dark negative energy together with the breath. And as it flows through your nostril and destroy the selfish attitude at at your heart completely. And transform into loving kindness, compassion. Each time you breathe in, you imagine, visualize taking away all the suffering completely. Not only the sufferings, but also the cause of suffering, all the negative karma. Next, as you breathe in, take all their delusion, all the afflictive emotion, completely, fully. And destroying the selfish attitude. Then within all the subtle obscuration as well. Try to feel that you have taken all their suffering, cause of suffering, on yourself and you are experiencing it. Enjoy in having taken on the sufferings. Then we try to think, even though they want happiness, they struggle. Not only ultimate happiness, but even temporary happiness. With that understanding, then as we breathe out to get breath, we send all our happiness, all the virtues, all the positive karma, all the positive qualities, wealth, everything, in the form of white light energy to get the breath. As breath, the air go out, the moment it touch that person's, they receive all the temporary relief and happiness. Again, try to send with total conviction that you are really giving, you are really sending all your happiness, all your positive karma, virtues, wealth, everything. Then we also send all the positive karma, all the spiritual realizations, as well as the ultimate happiness of fully awakened state. We imagine with total convictions that we give and send and they receive. We feel the joy of being able to give temporary ultimate happiness and the cause of those happiness. Now you can imagine a neutral person, someone you hardly know, where you don't feel attached nor angry, bad feelings. A neutral person. Again, see that person is also going through a lot of challenges, problems, suffering in their life. Just like anyone else. Try to understand and feel their pain and suffering. And generate a strong wish to relieve them from the sufferings, the pain. How wonderful it would be if I relieve the suffering and cause of suffering. I'm going to relieve them the suffering and cause of suffering by myself. It's a great opportunity for me to help to relieve their suffering, cause of suffering. With that strong wish, as you breathe in, breathe all their pain and suffering. And destroying the selfish attitude. All the suffering of physical suffering, emotional, mental sufferings. And then the cause of sufferings, or take all the negative karma on oneself. Then take on all the afflictive emotion, the delusion on oneself. Then take on all the subtle obscurations on oneself. Imagine total convictions. All the suffering and cause of suffering has been totally taken away on oneself. The joy in having able to take the suffering, leave that person of the suffering. Now, as you breathe out, send all your virtues, happiness, positive karma, all the wealth, everything that we have to offer in the form of white light energy as we breathe out, sending and giving temporary relief, happiness. Sending and giving all the positive karma, all the spiritual realizations, and the ultimate happiness of fully awakened state. Imagine total convictions that they really receive all the happiness and that we are able to send and give all of our happiness and virtues. Enjoy in able to do that. Now you can think of someone that we have conflict, you dislike most, your enemy. Again, think of the suffering and the pain that person is going through. Even he or she does not want pain and suffering, he or she is experiencing a lot of problem, pain and suffering, just like others. try to contemplate and feel the pain and suffering. Whatever physical challenges, pain, emotional, mental suffering, pain. Then generate a strong wish to free from the suffering and cause of suffering. It will be wonderful if one can help that person to free from their suffering, cause of suffering. This is great opportunity to do that. Then as you breathe in, take all the suffering on oneself. You take in all the negative karma. Then take in all the delusions. All the subtle obscurations. Visualize that person come free from all the suffering and cause of suffering that we have taken on ourselves. The joy in being able to do that. And as we breathe out, send all the temporary relief, happiness, all the positive karma, all the spiritual realizations, and made happiness. Imagine that person receive all of that, achieve temporary ultimate happiness. The joy in being able to do that. Feel the joy. Then we can reflect on the suffering of all sentient beings of the six realms. Some experience suffering of pain, some suffering experience of change, some experiencing suffering all pervasive, some all of them, two of them, and so forth. No one is free from the sufferings. Try to reflect, try to feel the pain and suffering. And generate a strong wish to free from the suffering, cause of suffering. Then as you breathe in, you imagine and visualize taking all the suffering of all sentient beings in the form of dark energy, together with your breath, enter through the nostril, destroying your selfish attitude, transforming it loving kindness, compassion. Next, take all their negative karma on one. Take all the delusions on oneself. And the subtle obscuration together with the breath. Imagine and visualize that you have taken all their suffering, cause of suffering on yourself. And then they are totally free from them. And experience the joy of being able to take all the suffering, cause of suffering on oneself. And as we breathe out of loving kindness, compassion, we send all our happiness, virtues, positive karma, wealth, everything that we have to offer in the form of whatever they need, temporary relief, happiness, whatever they need, together with the breath in the form of white light energy. And they all receive temporary relief, happiness. Then send positive karma, send all the spiritual realizations, and send them ultimate happiness. They all receive temporary ultimate happiness, totally satisfied relief, ultimate happiness. Again, try to experience the joy of being able to give and to send for happiness, virtues. And then you bring back your attention to the breath. and we dedicate the virtues that to Bodhicitta mind to be able to cultivate within our mind stream, minds of all sentient beings. Those who have all cultivated, not to decrease but improve more and more. Chanju sem chorim bo che ma ke pa na ke kyu che ke wa nyam pa me pa yang kong le kong tu pe wa shu. Okay, we are a little bit over the time, but maybe we can have little less questions, I guess, today.
So we have tea break.